Hi, my name is Ruta Putramentaite, and I'm sitting amongst a sculptural installation which I made for Galerie Jelení. And these sculptures consist of two kinds of elements which form symbiotic organisms when put together. So these two kinds are either from organic nature or inorganic, either materials I grown or made myself or I recycled myself, such as kombucha leather, bioplastic or papier-mâché. And they are overgrowing, forming new kinds of organisms together with industrially produced, mass-produced or mass commodities which are thrown away, not used anymore, and become garbage, which I collect and reuse again. So these two kind of elements join together, or I join them together and make this new kind of symbiotic organisms. And during this work, the materiality and the conditions of production of these materials was very important to me. My own produced the materials. I was searching for other kind of relationship as a sculptor with the materials I use. So it involved much more time and much more effort. So therefore, the relationship was much more intimate. Or more closer than materials you can usually buy in the shop. And then industrially produced commodities are very interesting to me because they're also made from nature, so-called nature. The chemical elements like cellulose or copper are found also in the natural world, but the way they are produced or manufactured doesn't let them to decompose that easily, and in fact many of them take several hundreds of years to decompose back to the very earth from which they were taken. So this brings me to think about far future, where these commodities outlive not only our generation but many generations of humans, and see the completely different world, maybe which we cannot even imagine. And so in this way I kind of see these sculptures or these symbiotic organisms as elements or excerpts of this future world, which were brought here to us, extracted from that world and shown here as these details or elements of the future world, which we don't know what it will be like, but we maybe can imagine when seeing these parts of it. And maybe these objects are still for us recognizable, but I'm thinking about the times maybe that these commodities won't be recognizable by people who won't know anymore what was their original function, or maybe these objects even will be grown even more, that they wouldn't be even recognizable for us from nowadays point of view. So maybe they will be overgrown with these organic nature elements. So I'm interested in this project. I'm interested in different time scales. Again, with comparison to human time, or one generation, or one person's lifetime, for example. The geological time, how it flows, and how human time flows. And I'm also interested in non-human agency. What is non-human agency, when the very word agency is related to human world, where we see agency as related to consciousness or aim or some kind of power position. And for me, the elements I work with, plants or fungi, their agency for me means that they are really interested and aiming to grow and are very resilient in that, in growing and regrowing, and can claim their territory in this. So like for me, it is their agency, and I think that they can and have the potential to outgrow us all or our civilization in the end.